The tires of my old Ford pickup crunched against the gravel as I turned onto Maple Hollow Road, the place I once called home. The sun was setting behind the distant hills, painting the sky in soft orange and purple colors. A cool breeze floated in through the open window, carrying with it the scent of fresh-cut grass and something even sweeter, nostalgia. It had been almost 3 years since I had driven down this road. 3 long years working out of state, saving up money, dreaming of the day I would come back and finally rebuild the old farmhouse that my grandfather built with his own 2 hands. In my mind, I pictured it all, the faded white paint peeling off the barn, the old wooden swing tied to the giant oak tree, the rusty mailbox with our family name, Bennett, still crooked but proud. I smiled to myself, feeling that warm pull of childhood memories. But when I turned the corner and the land came into view, my heart stopped. Instead of the old barn and open fields, there was a massive, shiny hotel standing tall and bold against the sky. I slammed the brakes. My truck jerked to a halt. I stared, mouth hanging open. The land, my family's land, was completely unrecognizable. The fields where my brothers and I used to chase fireflies were gone, buried under concrete. The barn where my grandfather used to fix tractors was nowhere to be seen. Instead, there were wide, polished driveways, sleek black SUVs lined up, men in tuxedos opening car doors, and laughing guests pulling their luggage behind them. At the very top of the building, a rooftop pool glittered in the dying sunlight, with people lounging under fancy umbrellas, sipping colorful drinks. The smell of chlorine and expensive perfume floated through the air. And then I saw it. A large shiny sign at the entrance. Big bold letters screamed. An HOA community project, approved by President Carol Simmons. My hands shook as I gripped the steering wheel tighter. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Carol Simmons. The same Carol who used to walk her golden retriever past our house every evening. The same Carol who always smiled sweetly and brought over banana bread during Christmas. The same Carol who promised to look after things while I was away. Carol had stolen my family's land. And built a 5-star hotel on it. Without my permission. For a few long moments, I just sat there. My heart pounded in my ears. A lump grew in my throat. The back of my eyes stung with angry, bitter tears. All those years of hard work. All the memories buried beneath layers of cement and greed. I could feel the anger rising in my chest like a wildfire, burning hotter and hotter with each breath I took. I thought of my late grandfather, who had poured his life into that land. How he used to walk those fields every morning with his old straw hat and a worn-out shovel slung over his shoulder. I thought of my mother, who always said, "No matter what happens, this land will always be our family's pride." And now it was gone. Or so Carol thought. Because deep inside all that anger and heartbreak, a new feeling started to grow, determination. Cold, sharp, and unstoppable. I wiped the tears from my eyes and smiled. A slow, dangerous smile. Carol Simmons had no idea who she was messing with. She might have built her fancy hotel. She might have tricked the neighborhood. She might have thought I was gone for good. But what Carol didn't know was, I had already set a trap long before I ever left town. And she had just walked straight into it. I threw the truck into reverse, dust kicking up behind me as I sped away from the hotel. I needed a plan. I needed proof. I needed allies. Because I wasn't just going to take the hotel down. I was going to make sure everyone knew exactly what Carol Simmons had done. And when the truth came out, it wouldn't just be the hotel that crumbled. It would be Carol's entire world. 3 years earlier, before everything went wrong, I stood under the old oak tree with Carol Simmons and the other HOA board members. It was a warm Saturday morning, and they had come to check in before I left town for a job opportunity in Texas. I remember Carol's fake sweet voice like it was yesterday. "Don't worry about a thing, Jordan," she said, patting my shoulder like she was my grandma. We'll keep an eye on your property. You can trust us. I believed her. I wanted to believe her. After all, the HOA had always been small, just a group of older neighbors who worried more about lawn heights and trash days than anything serious. And Carol? She was everybody's favorite. Always smiling. Always throwing bake sales and fundraisers for the good of the community. Before I left, I had one important thing to do. I walked into the town courthouse and filed some documents my grandfather had warned me about before he passed. A restricted covenant on the land. Basically, it said that our land, all 12 acres, could only be used for private family farming or a single-family home. No businesses. No hotels. No shopping centers. Ever. I did it because I knew how much my grandfather loved that land. He didn't want it to be eaten up by greedy builders. At the time, I didn't think anyone would even care about the land. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't near the main town square. It was just quiet, peaceful farmland. But as it turns out, peace is exactly what people with money are willing to destroy to build their empires. The first few months after I moved away, everything seemed fine. I got a few friendly emails from Carol updating me. We had a lovely harvest festival this year. Wish you were here. The neighborhood looks beautiful this fall. Nothing out of the ordinary. No hints. No warnings. Then the update stopped. I got busy with work and life in Texas. I sent money home for taxes, made a few quick calls to my childhood friend, Mason, who lived 2 blocks away, and trusted everything was safe. Maybe that was my first mistake. Maybe I should have come back sooner. Because while I was busy building my future, Carol Simmons was busy stealing my past. It started small. According to Mason, who was about to become my most important ally, the HOA started beautification projects on our side of town. First, they built a little park on the next lot over. Then they paved the dirt roads leading toward my land. Then new streetlights popped up. Then rumors spread about big changes coming to the neighborhood. Mason said he even saw men in suits walking around my property with blueprints, measuring things and taking pictures. When he asked questions, Carol told him. It's all approved. Jordan signed the paperwork before he left. That was a lie. A huge lie. I never signed anything beyond the restricted covenant at the courthouse. And that document made it illegal to build anything commercial. But Carol must have thought no one would notice. Or maybe she thought she could get the town council to side with her later. Because when I finally returned, the whole hotel was already built. Guests were swimming in the rooftop pool, drinking cocktails where my grandpa once tilled the earth. And the HOA was richer than ever. They were charging fees, selling memberships, and bragging about how their community project was the future of Maple Hollow. Except for one tiny, deadly mistake. The restricted covenant I filed at the courthouse. It was still there. Untouched. Unbreakable. Carol had no idea that by building her empire on my family's land, she had already built it on quicksand. That night after seeing the hotel for the first time, I sat in Mason's garage, flipping through the thick folder of papers he had kept for me. He had collected everything. Photos of construction equipment. HOA newsletters bragging about the project. Emails printed out where Carol promised residents Jordan's full approval. Even a witness statement from Mr. Henderson, the old retired judge 2 houses down, who swore Carol faked my signature at one of the meetings. We had proof. Solid, cold, legal proof. And tomorrow, I was going to take it all to the town courthouse. But first, I needed Carol to dig her hole even deeper. I needed her to feel safe. I needed her to brag just a little more. So I showed up the next morning at the grand opening party for the hotel. Dressed in my nicest jeans and cleanest boots, I walked straight into the marble-floored lobby. People laughed and clinked glasses of champagne all around me. And there she was. Carol Simmons. Wearing a glittering blue dress, holding a microphone, standing on a shiny wooden stage. Her voice rang out through the loudspeakers. Today is the proudest day of my life. Thanks to the support of our HOA and this beautiful community, we turned an old, forgotten piece of land into something extraordinary. The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. Carol smiled so wide her teeth almost sparkled. And I am proud to say that Jordan Bennett, the rightful owner of this land, gave us his blessing from the very beginning. The words echoed around the room. My jaw tightened. My fists clenched. That was it. That was the final nail in her coffin. In front of dozens of witnesses, reporters, HOA members, guests, even a few town officials, Carol had just publicly admitted to a massive lie. I had her. I pulled out my phone and clicked record. Her entire speech, word for word, captured forever. And tomorrow morning, I would walk straight into the courthouse and drop a bomb that would tear this hotel, this HOA, and Carol's shiny little world to pieces. But little did I know. Carol had one last dirty trick up her sleeve. One that would make everything even more dangerous than I had planned. The next morning, I woke up before the sun even touched the sky. My heart pounded with a mix of nerves and excitement as I threw on a clean shirt, grabbed my thick folder of evidence, and climbed into my truck. Today was the day everything would change. By lunchtime, Carol Simmons would be exposed. The hotel would be shut down. Justice would finally be served. Or so I thought. When I pulled into the courthouse parking lot, I noticed something strange right away. Two black SUVs were sitting at the entrance. Men in dark suits stood nearby, talking quietly into walkie-talkies. Their faces were serious. Too serious. I shook it off. Maybe it was just regular courthouse security. I grabbed my folder and walked toward the front doors. But before I could step inside, Jordan Bennett, a stern voice called out behind me. I turned around. Two of the suited men were walking toward me. Their faces hard, their steps quick. You're under investigation, one of them said, flashing a badge. There's been a complaint filed against you, for fraud and trespassing. I blinked. I laughed nervously. This has to be a mistake, I said. I'm here to file a complaint. Not. Hands where we can see them, sir, the second man barked. You need to come with us. My heart sank like a stone. I slowly raised my hands and let them take the folder out of my grip. Inside that folder was my only proof. And now, they had it. They led me into a small gray interview room inside the courthouse. No windows. Just a table, two chairs, and a buzzing overhead light. An older woman with sharp glasses and a tight bun sat across from me, flipping through my folder like it was yesterday's newspaper. Mr. Bennett, she said, voice cold as ice. According to the Maple Hollow HOA, you agreed to the development of the hotel project in writing. And now you're attempting to cause trouble under false pretenses. That's a serious offense. I stared at her, stunned. I never agreed to anything, I said firmly. Those papers are fake. I filed a restricted covenant years ago. Check the courthouse records. She raised an eyebrow and tapped the folder with her pen. Unfortunately, she said slowly, it appears that document is missing from our system. I felt like the ground was slipping out from under me. Missing? How? The restricted covenant was gone. Meanwhile, outside, Carol Simmons was already at work. While I sat trapped in that gray room, she stood on the courthouse steps, smiling wide for the cameras. It's heartbreaking, she said dramatically, wiping fake tears from her eyes. Poor Jordan, he must be confused. We're all just trying to do what's best for Maple Hollow. The local news reporters ate it up like candy. Their headlines were already writing themselves. HOA president heroically defends community against bitter land dispute. Troubled heir accused of sabotaging neighborhood progress. By the time they finally let me go, hours later, I had missed my window. The news had already spread like wildfire. People looked at me differently. Whispers followed me down the courthouse halls. Neighbors who once waved from their porches now shut their doors when they saw me coming. Carol had flipped the whole town against me. She wasn't just playing dirty. She was playing to win. And worst of all, somehow, someone from the inside must have helped her. Someone had erased my restricted covenant from the official records. I had a mole. And I had no idea who it was. That night, I sat on the porch of Mason's house, staring out into the darkness. He handed me a cold soda and sat down next to me. "You're not beaten yet, man," he said quietly. "You just need another move. A bigger one." I shook my head. "How?" "She's got the HOA. She's got the courthouse. And now the whole town thinks I'm some crazy troublemaker." Mason grinned. "Then it's time to stop playing defense, and start playing offense." I looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He leaned in close. "There's something Carol forgot. Something even she can't erase. And if we find it first, we can still bring her down." My pulse quickened. There was still a way. A secret weapon. But before Mason could explain more, his phone buzzed loudly. He picked it up, his face turning pale as he read the message. He showed it to me without a word. It was a photo of my grandfather's old farmhouse. And it was burning. Flames reaching high into the night sky. Someone, and I didn't have to guess who, had set fire to what little was left of my family's land. The smell of smoke hit me before I even reached the end of Mason Street. I didn't even think. I just jumped into my truck, Mason right behind me, and sped toward the old farmhouse. My hands shook on the wheel. My heart slammed against my chest. When I got there, the fire department was already packing up. The flames were out, but the damage was done. The place where my grandpa taught me how to fix engines. The porch where my mom read me bedtime stories. The fields where my brothers and I used to race barefoot under the summer sun. All of it was blackened ruins now. I stood there, frozen, while neighbors gathered at a distance, whispering. Some pointed. Some shook their heads. Nobody came close. I knew exactly what they were thinking. Poor Jordan. Lost everything. Went crazy. Blamed the HOA. Exactly the way Carol wanted them to think. I clenched my fists so hard my knuckles turned white. No. Not yet. Not giving up. Because as I stared at the wreckage, I remembered something. Something Mason had started to say before the fire. There's something Carol forgot. Something even she can't erase. I turned to him now, the smoke making my eyes water. What were you talking about? I demanded. What did she miss? Mason glanced around, lowered his voice. The well, he said. The old one behind the barn. Remember? At first, I didn't understand. The well was ancient, built with heavy stones, covered in moss, half buried by weeds. Then it hit me like a bolt of lightning. The deed. The real one. When I was a teenager, my grandpa had shown me an old metal box, rusted and dented, hidden deep inside the stone wall of the well. Inside that box was the original land deed, and a copy of the restricted covenant, too. Grandpa had hidden it there, just in case something bad ever happened. At the time, I thought he was being paranoid. Now, I realized, he had seen people like Carol coming from a mile away. The next morning, before the sun was up, Mason and I grabbed flashlights and shovels and made our way toward the ruins. The fire had scorched the house, but the barn's stone foundation still stood. And behind it, half covered in ash and broken boards, was the old well. We worked fast, clearing debris, pulling back weeds, scraping away years of dirt and grime. My arms ached. Sweat poured down my face. But I didn't stop. Finally, Mason's shovel hit something with a metallic clang. We both froze. He dropped to his knees, brushing away the last bit of dirt. There it was. The box. I reached for it with shaking hands. It was heavier than I remembered, the lid rusted shut. Mason handed me a crowbar. With one hard yank, it popped open. Inside, wrapped carefully in wax paper, were two things. The original property deed, signed and notarized decades ago in my grandfather's neat handwriting. And the restricted covenant, stamped, sealed, and completely legal. Still valid. Still binding. Carol hadn't erased everything. She had only erased the easy copies. She never even knew about the originals. I sat back, breathing hard, the box clutched to my chest. This was it. This was my weapon. But we didn't have time to celebrate. Because as I stood up, headlights flashed across the ruins. A black SUV pulled up fast, tires crunching over broken wood and glass. The door swung open. Carol Simmons stepped out, her blue high heels sinking slightly into the mud. Behind her, two of her board members followed, the same ones who had always smiled at me during holiday parties. Only now, their smiles were gone. Their faces were cold. Hard. Carol's eyes locked on the metal box in my hands. And for the first time since I came back. She looked scared. "Hand it over, Jordan," she said sharply. "You don't know what you're doing." I laughed bitterly. "I know exactly what I'm doing," I said. "I'm taking back my family's land. And I'm taking you down with it." Her face twisted into something ugly. The sweet neighbor act was gone. This was the real Carol. Sharp. Ruthless. Desperate. "If you fight me," she hissed, stepping closer, "you'll lose everything. You'll be ruined. You'll never work in this town again." I held the box tighter. Good thing I never planned to stay. Mason stepped beside me, shovel still in his hands like a weapon. "You better leave now," he said, voice low and dangerous. For a long second, Carol stared at us. Her nails dug into her palms. Her lip curled in anger. Then she turned on her heel and stormed back to her SUV, her goons following close behind. The engine roared to life, tires spinning in the dirt as they sped away. As the sun rose behind us, painting the sky pink and gold, I realized this war was far from over. I had the proof now. Real, solid proof. But Carol wasn't going to give up easily. She was cornered. And cornered animals always fight the hardest. I looked at Mason. He looked back at me. Neither of us had to say it. The next move was ours. But it was going to be the most dangerous move yet. Because Carol wasn't just going to fight dirty. She was going to fight to destroy me completely. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't. The box with the deed and covenant sat on the coffee table like a bomb ready to explode. Outside, Mason kept watch by the window, just in case Carol tried anything crazy. We both knew. Tomorrow would be the end, for one of us. And I was going to make sure it wasn't me. At sunrise, I dressed in my best clothes, dark jeans, a clean white shirt, and my old work boots polished until they shined. I tucked the deed and covenant into a new folder and slid it into a backpack. This time, I wasn't going alone. Mason drove. We took a different route into town, making sure no one followed. The courthouse loomed ahead, its stone pillars glowing gold in the early morning light. My hands shook a little as I grabbed the backpack and climbed the steps. This was it. No turning back. Inside, the building buzzed with life. Lawyers, city workers, and a few early reporters moved around like bees in a hive. They all turned to look when I walked in. Whispers floated through the air. That's him. That's the troublemaker. Is he crazy, or is he telling the truth? I ignored them. I marched straight to the county recorder's office. Mrs. Delaney, the head clerk, was already there behind the counter. A woman with short gray hair and a no-nonsense stare. She looked up as I approached, frowning. Back again, Mr. Bennett? I nodded, calm but firm. I need to file something urgent, I said, pulling out the folder. And I need you to check the vault for land deeds filed under the Bennett family, specifically the restricted covenant filed 3 years ago. Her eyes narrowed. For a second, I thought she might refuse. But something in my voice must have convinced her. She sighed, took the folder, and disappeared into the back room. 10 minutes later, she returned, holding 2 thick documents. Dusty, but very real. The originals. Still here. Still legal. Carol's friends at the courthouse hadn't dug deep enough to destroy them. They had only wiped the digital copies. The real paper records, locked away in the vault, were untouched. Looks like you were telling the truth, Mrs. Delaney said, handing everything back to me. I'll alert the judge. You'll want to file a formal injunction immediately. I nodded, heart pounding with relief. Thank you. While I was filing the injunction, Mason sent out the second part of the plan. A mass email blast to the whole neighborhood. He had saved every HOA newsletter, every fake approval Carol sent out, every photo of her grand speeches. He attached them all, with a copy of the real deed and covenant. And hit send. Within minutes, phones all over Maple Hollow started buzzing. People stopped in their tracks, reading. Gasps filled the air. Angry voices rose. Carol's lies, her greed, her fake approvals, everything was out in the open. At noon sharp, the emergency hearing began. I sat in the courtroom, my hands sweating against the wooden bench. Across the aisle, Carol sat stiffly in a navy blue suit, her smile tight and fake. Her lawyer, a man with too much hair gel and too little charm, whispered frantically in her ear. The judge, a stern woman named Judge Alvarez, looked down at us over her glasses. Her face showed no emotion. We are here to address the matter of alleged illegal construction by the Maple Hollow HOA on land owned by Jordan Bennett, she said. Mr. Bennett, you may present your evidence. I stood up. My voice shook at first, but then grew stronger. I told the whole story. The promises. The lies. The missing documents. The hidden box in the well. I showed the judge the real deed and covenant. And when I finished, the whole courtroom was silent. You could hear a pin drop. Judge Alvarez turned to Carol. Do you have anything to say, Mrs. Simmons? Carol stood, smoothing her skirt. She opened her mouth, probably to spin another one of her sweet-sounding lies. But before she could say a word, the doors at the back of the courtroom burst open. Half the town poured in. Neighbors. Reporters. Even some of the HOA board members who had once stood behind Carol. All of them holding printed copies of Mason's email. All of them looking furious. A woman in the crowd shouted. You lied to us, Carol. Another man yelled. You stole from us. Carol's face turned as pale as paper. She stammered, searching for words. But it was too late. The trap had snapped shut. Judge Alvarez banged her gavel. Effective immediately, she said. The hotel project is shut down. Ownership of the land is returned to Mr. Bennett. And Mrs. Simmons, You and the Maple Hollow HOA are hereby ordered to pay damages for fraud and illegal construction. Carol collapsed into her seat, defeated. Her lawyer threw his papers into his briefcase with a disgusted sigh. I closed my eyes for a second. Breathed in deeply. Finally, justice. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. Microphones and cameras pushed toward my face. Everyone wanted to hear my story. But I only said one thing. This land belonged to my family. It still does. And no one, not even the president of the HOA, can steal that away. That evening, Mason and I stood on the edge of the burnt field, watching the sunset. The hotel stood empty now, its windows dark, its doors locked. It would soon be torn down, just like it never existed. Mason clapped me on the back. You did it, man. I smiled. We did it. The wind whispered through the trees. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was home again. If you like this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.